Welcome to Here Come the Irish. I'm Michael Owens.
And I'm Nick Southwood.
We have another great interview lined up for this weekend. Former Notre Dame football player John Goodman. He was there during the Charlie Weiss era as well as Brian Kelly. Had a great career at Notre Dame, capped off by a strong 2012 season, several touchdowns, which we'll discuss in depth. We have him on the line right now. How are you doing today, John?
Everybody doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining, taking time off of your Sunday in the middle of college basketball season to join us.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. The Irish aren't playing right now, so I can be distracted.
Yeah, definitely. First question we got for you. I know we sent you in the questions, so you kind of got an understanding of what we'll be asking you. But first question right off the bat, we ask everybody this: why did you choose Notre Dame?
Well, you would think that's a simple question, being a born and raised Catholic kid from Fort Wayne, Indiana, right down the road. There's a lot more to it, though. And I realized that once I got there. Some things, just from the beginning. My family being a big Notre Dame family, watching them from basketball to actually going up to. I went to a lot of basketball games when I was younger. I was actually more in tune with the basketball team than I was totally with football until I was about high school, because my uncle and some folks in my family knew some of the players back in the day, and we'd go up to the games and Chris Thomas and those guys, those teams. I was very in tune with those guys back when I was younger, and when I got into high school and started watching a lot more college football, I think that and visiting the school and everything with getting recruited, it became much more apparent that this was the school I wanted to go to. For a multitude of reasons. I think that the faith, the atmosphere, the tradition, obviously, that's stuff that I wanted to be a part of in my college career. And once I started getting recruited, realizing that this could be something that could be a realization, I just continued to press forward and finally got that offer. Actually, it was a funny story. It's probably one of my last offers. Sitting there, I had Michigan, I had some other really good schools, pretty much the Big Ten and Oklahoma and some other schools that had offered, but I was just waiting for that Notre Dame offer, and then got that call from Coach Weiss, so it was pretty special.
So if you didn't go Notre Dame, what was your other schools you were thinking about going to if you didn't end up getting that offer, or were you thinking about maybe just trying to walk on if you never got an offer?
Well, the number one team or school was Michigan, and they had offered me for a quarterback, and I was coming out of high school somewhat being recruited as an athlete, is what they called it back then. I don't really know what they tag these players as these days. That I was playing punt return, third return, I was playing defense. I would get in the backfield a little bit, but I was primarily a quarterback. So they offered me as such, and I think that I can't remember the exact time frame, but I think that Rich Rodriguez had just been hired there too. Even though Lloyd Carr was, I think that was the coach there at the time, was the coach that offered me the scholarship. So, and it would have been fun because I feel like I would have picked that off as well. But again, throughout my whole entire recruiting process, all the way up until pretty much, I think it was May of my junior year, I was being recruited by just every other school except really hard by Notre Dame. And then just got that call. I went to a couple of junior days up at Notre Dame, but nothing that, I wasn't really necessarily getting the hint of anything. And then was just surprised. I think it was on a Saturday. I was just sitting at home after track practice in May and got the call from Coach Weiss, and we had the conversation. And, when we had that conversation, had my junior day the next week. The funny thing about that is Mike Golick was the first to take to commit to Notre Dame of our recruiting class, which ended up being the number one recruiting class. And then Braxton Cave always says that he was number two, but that's a lie. I was number two because Braxton and I went up to the junior day that next week on Saturday, and I was in Coach Weiss's office just before Braxton. We actually said what's up to each other when he was walking in next, and then he committed right after me. So it's a funny story, but that's where it all started, with just a really close knit group that we had of that class. Me, Mike, Brax, and just, I think there was about 25 or 26 others of us. So, but yeah, it's a pretty cool story and really cool to talk about with the guys who I definitely still stay in touch with.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm glad Notre Dame ended up offering you, and you end up staying in state. We're here broadcasting from Indianapolis. We love in-state guys, whether it's Zach and Nick Martin here from Indianapolis, or which we'll talk about here in a second, Jalen Smith, Drew Tranquil, also up near Fort Wayne area. It's cool you're talking about Mike Golick Jr. We started doing the interviews last fall. I think we did one interview several years ago. It was just we actually had Mike Golick Jr. on here. It was really cool. But having these interviews and interviewing former athletes, really started doing this again last fall, and we're glad you could come on here. But definitely glad that you were able to get an offer from Notre Dame and go there. Definitely love in-state talent. I hate seeing sometimes guys going from other schools, and obviously which kind of leads us to our next question. What was it like being a Hoosier and going to Notre Dame? I know that obviously Indiana has a lot more basketball talent, no disrespect at all than they do football talent. I know there's only probably a handful of 4-star recruits here from Indiana. So what was it like being a Hoosier and getting to go close to home?
It was great for me. I always wanted to stay close to home. There were schools that had offered that were from afar. A couple in Texas, a couple out west, a couple on the East Coast, and then south. And when you're getting recruited like that, as a kid of that age, I don't, me specifically, I was a little bit frightened at the idea of, leaving my home state because I was just so grounded of where I was and felt comfortable where I was. And that's why Notre Dame was on my radar. That's obviously like why Michigan was on my radar too, because that's right up the road. But, being from Indiana, and I think that Indiana definitely gets undervalued in terms of the talent that comes out of the state. And where I came from, specifically Fort Wayne, actually in the last 10 years or so, AWP. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but they're a big, they were a big workout facility that we worked out. Tyler Eifert, Jalen Smith. We were a couple of the three of the first maybe 5 or 6 guys that started working out there, and those guys had built something really special in Fort Wayne and developed so many athletes over the last couple of years. That you'll see a ton of them spread from the MAC to Big Ten and just all over the country, whether it be basketball, baseball, football. They're just the talent comes out of Fort Wayne, and that's living in Indianapolis now too, which I do. I'm down here in Broad Ripple. Been down here for 5 years. My wife and I see it comes out of Indianapolis as well. And it's a basketball heavy state. I get that. We all get that. But my focus growing up was football. That was my passion. Was good at baseball, but that was kind of too slow of a sport for me. I figured out once I got to high school that track was a lot more entertaining to me than baseball. So I was a football first, basketball, because that's what my buddies did and loved my coach, and we had a good team at Delanger and Fort Wayne, and then ran track and to kind of prepare myself for football again. So that was pretty much my 8th grade through high school career right there until I got to Notre Dame. So I think that when it comes to football, we have so many athletes all over the place. I think that it was just that we needed that someone like AWP, Athletes with Purpose, which is run by Mike Lito up there in Fort Wayne. He played with my brother actually at St. Francis up in Fort Wayne. Something like that to develop these guys rather than just work with all the raw talent that we had coming out of there. Because when you look at the schools up there, I mean, Fort Wayne, Bishop DeLanger, you got Lures, you have Snyder, you have Northrop, all these huge schools, Carroll, Homestead, that have all these kids that they raw talent was it. And once you finally had someone there, working to develop all these kids, it really has shown in the last 10 to 8 to 10 years. So yeah, playing with guys like or growing up with guys like Jalen and Drew and again it's Tyler and all these guys. It really shows. And then being down here in Indianapolis, I actually coach at Chittard High School where Zach Martin went to high school. So and obviously Zach's a good buddy too, and Nick. And you meet all their friends and kind of their community, and it's pretty much the same down here, but on a much bigger scale because it's obviously a much bigger city. So Sheldon and all the guys that have played from Ben Davis to Warren Central to Cathedral and Chittard and Roncalli, Pat Coons down at Roncalli. There's guys that are scattered all over the place, and and have all found success at Notre Dame too. It's not that they just go to Notre Dame and get recruited there. We're not, we aren't content with that. Guys have really shown and become something, and it's really cool to see. And I think that's something that needs to be accounted for as well, is that, these guys from Indiana, they want to stay close to home. And I think that was a big emphasis of Coach Weiss and Coach Kelly, is that they want guys that are Notre Dame guys. They want guys that come in and want to stay there and actually perform for the school. Guys like Jalen, guys like Tyler, guys like Zach, guys like Sheldon. A lot of those guys were captains and came from right here in the backyard of Notre Dame. So it's pretty cool to see, and I hope it continues. I think it definitely will continue.
Well, man, that's awesome. I didn't realize you moved out to Indianapolis and Broad Ripple. We're here. I coach baseball at Franklin Central High School, if you're familiar with that. That's awesome you're here. Like you were saying, it seems like all the in-state recruits that Notre Dame's gotten over the last decade, they all turn out to be really good, and they always make the most of it. And there's a lot of guys just from Indiana that are in NFL, so they're always underrated. And being like a baseball coach around the city myself, even in baseball and like football, athletes from Indiana are just always underrated. But so even baseball, like we've had a guy from Roncalli drafted 32nd overall, straight out of high school last year, and then several guys like from Cathedral and other schools drafted in baseball. So Indiana is definitely underrated when it comes to athletics.
Right. And again, like I said earlier, and like you mentioned and alluded to, it's not just basketball. We all know this is a basketball state, and I think overall, as a whole, it is. You got a lot of small towns that feed these kids that you didn't even know existed, and all of a sudden they're going to these D1 schools and scoring 20, 30 points in college and going on to the NBA and whatnot. And I think the track record shows, Indiana basketball is a heck of a basketball state. When you're in Florida or California or something, say you're from Indiana, that's the conversation people have is basketball. But again, the athletes are coming from Fort Wayne and the region and South Bend area, especially the Indianapolis area. And it reminds me, it's funny because all these kids that grew up during the Peyton Manning days and how the Colts just developed football here in the city of Indianapolis, and kind of the state of Indiana has been a big, I think, culture change as well, and why people are such more inclined to play football and be invested in football is because of him and those Colts players and those Colts teams over the last 15, 20 years. Now that those kids are in high school, you got a lot of kids named Peyton and a lot of kids that are playing quarterback and whatnot. And it's cool to focus on some of that now that I'm a high school coach, and I'm helping out, volunteering over at Chittard, just doing receivers and whatnot, and helping out with offense and special teams. But I now that I'm back into the coaching, I'm seeing more of this from the high school kids as my focus has shifted more back to high school football. So.
Yeah, so I know we've been talking about, Jalen, Drew, yourself, kind of in-state talent guys. Just have a quick question for you. You think about guys coming from in-state wanting to play for, that hometown school. A lot of times, do you think those guys may be a little bit more highly motivated just to see, that they want their team to win more often than if they were to go somewhere else, would be more motivated just because it's like, hey, this is my hometown. I want to see us, win a championship, even more so if they were to go somewhere else?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. Can you kind of rephrase that for me? Do you mean for their high school team or their
No, I mean, so when you went to Notre Dame, obviously there's guys come from all over the place to come play at Notre Dame, but guys that are from Indiana, do you guys feel a little bit more motivation when you go there to win, championships, stuff like that, just because you grew up fans of Notre Dame and all that kind of stuff, maybe a little bit different than somebody coming in from out of town?
Absolutely, and that was a big joke about when Brax and I were when we were recruited up there, and we had so many 5-star guys in that class. Mike, you had Floyd, you had Rudolph, you had Dane, you had Ethan Johnson, a bunch of guys that were just players and known from all over the country. And when we all came together, it was kind of just a running joke that the two Indiana boys, but motivation, chip on your shoulders was just the exact, I think, phrase I would use in that regard, because you come in and you're matched up finally versus all of these guys that can play, football just as good as you, or are they better? Are they not? Are you better? And you kind of want to prove yourself. And, you had guys from Ohio. We had probably the most diverse team I've ever been a part of. Guys from California, I think Oregon, all New Jersey, Texas, Florida, just all over the country. And then you can kind of compare yourself and work with that chip on your shoulder, because these guys don't understand that we do take football seriously here in Indiana, and that we were recruited for a reason as well. And I think a lot of these guys that have found the success up at Notre Dame have had that, and people have doubted guys like Drew Tranquil. Does he have the speed? Does this, that? He's been injured. He's Jalen with his injuries, things like that, and the resilience that these guys show. I mean, Tyler Eifert getting injured, and you guys have seen. He just signed a new contract. It's the resilience is something that's really special, and I think across the board with these Indiana kids that are getting recruited there and play there. And again, I think it's all part of the culture of we want to go to Notre Dame. Yeah, it's nice to stay close to home, but we're at this big Division I college that has this national presence, and I'm just really happy to see that national presence is a lot of Fort Wayne and Indianapolis and Indiana kids are headlining that national presence. So.
Yeah, and absolutely, like you're saying, being a kid from Indiana, like, kind of underrated when it comes to football, that sort of thing. We had Cam McDaniel on here last fall, and I'm pretty sure he could speak for 10 hours about being an underdog and working hard and being motivated and upsets and stuff like that. I mean, that was a great interview as well. Kind of transitioning a little bit, some other questions we want to ask you, kind of more specific, especially with that 2012 season. If you want to start off with the first question we got, Nick.
Yeah, so obviously you guys played the Navy game in Ireland there. Just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were on that experience playing out of the country like that.
Yeah, Ireland. I mean, obviously that's a fun place. I've always wanted to go to Ireland. I didn't think that playing a football game there in front of 80,000 fans would be the first time I'd visit there. But that was a trip to remember. It was a little rough, actually, because that was our first game of the year. Obviously, it was versus Navy. A lot of hype going into that season. And, we weren't necessarily accustomed to a trip that long. The furthest trip we take is 3.5-hour flight to California at the end of the year to play either Stanford or USC, and that's a 7-hour flight, and getting off, and it's a big time change and things like that come into effect. I think we had an early practice on Thursday, if I could remember correctly. Maybe it was Wednesday, very early practice in the morning, Eastern Coast time, and then took the flight and got off the plane and pretty much had another practice. So we were a little run down. I don't know if you can perfect a schedule with changing time zones and things like that, but ended up, we stayed at a really nice hotel, the Ritz, I think, up in like the hills outside of Dublin, and it was pretty incredible, and we got to see the city and whatnot. So things started to obviously even out as the week went along, and then we got to game day and took care of business. So as much as we would have loved to have stayed for a couple more days to enjoy it and whatnot, at least our fans got to, and I think that it was something really special for the fan base and the Notre Dame community just in general. And we got some cool keepsakes, the cleats and stuff like that, and then we got a ton of photos and a ton of like team gear that were geared towards that Ireland trip that were really special. And to be the team that got to do that, you definitely hold that close to your heart. To be the first, I don't think it was the first. I think we might have been the second team in history to play in Ireland, and got a good W and started off a 12-0 season. So.
Yeah, I think I was reading somewhere that it was the 80s or 90s they'd played there before, but actually they're playing there here maybe not next year, but the following year, I think 2020 maybe. And they're actually they do not week 1, it's like week 0 they call it. So it's like they'll play a week before all the other college teams do. Then they'll get like a bye week, and then they'll have their next game. So they'll have a whole week's rest. I don't remember 2012. Did you guys just play Purdue the next week, or did you have another week off?
We did not have a week off, so that was straight into Purdue week. So, yeah, and I saw that. I think I saw that their next game. You said that was in Ireland, or where are they playing? They're playing in Ireland.
Yeah, they're
correct?
playing in Ireland in the next few years again. It's like before all the other teams play in week 1. So it's like week 0, then all the other teams play while they have a bye week, then they start their week 2 game.
Right, and that's see, that right there allows you much more time to get back to normal life, because we took that flight directly after the game and came back, and you play a game and you practice all week out there on a different time zone, and your body is just completely thrown off. Then you get on a 7-hour flight back home, and then it's I think it was late Sunday at that point, or no, early. It was midday Sunday at that point, and then you got to immediately recover and get back into the swing of things of school starting and all of that. So yeah, it's gonna definitely suit them well to have that week off the next week.
Yeah, if I remember correct, you were speaking earlier about those cleats and stuff. Didn't you guys have the Ireland flag on the cleats or some part of your uniform? Those are pretty sick.
Yeah. Those are pretty nice. Those were, I don't know what Under Armour is going to come out with. I'm sure they're going to come out with something special, but those were Adidas when we were there. So, but yeah, they were legit. They were. I still have a bunch of the gloves in actually back home in Fort Wayne that I saved up. So I'll probably give them, to my nieces and nephews or something like that one day. But pretty cool keepsakes. Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't want them, just feel free. Hit me up anytime. I'll drive to Broadville and pick them up. Yeah, another thing. I think back then in 2012, they were saying like 30,000 people from the United States were flying over to Ireland. I think it's testament to, first of all, how much money Notre Dame fans have, but just how diehard fans they are. Like 30,000 people traveling from the United States for like 1 weekend over to Ireland just shows how big a Notre Dame fan base is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not too surprised by that. I think that's about spot on. In fact, I'd probably think it'd be more to fill that big stadium that we played in. And two of those people were, my sister and her husband, and she lives over in Frankfurt, Germany. She's been over there for about 7 or 8 years now, and bringing up a family and whatnot now over in Frankfurt. And so she got to come over and had a flight coming through England to come over and visit. So that was really nice to see her. But, you think about 30,000, 35,000 people. Well, the rest were from, overseas. And, you just wonder where they all came from. But that just goes to show that, it's such a strong base here not just Indiana, but the United States, but it's worldwide. And that's how special it is these folks watch these games and stay tuned into these games worldwide. And, it's just a Notre Dame effect. And we probably had, I think, 7 or 8 night games the year that we went 12-0. And that's going to just continue. It's just always going to continue. And that's why I think that you should definitely be cognizant, of your social media and things like that, and just like your attitude in general, because, you're followed by so many folks. And I think that's why it actually has helped us and a lot of my good buddies that I went to school with and played with to kind of grow up and be the gentleman that we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Transitioning from the Ireland game, I know in week 2 you guys played Purdue. Obviously, Purdue wasn't like a top 25 team or like that, but you were at a disadvantage coming back from Ireland. And I know that I was actually at that game myself. Can you talk about that game and that 10-yard catch and kind of take us through that? If anybody is familiar with that game in 2012 where Tommy Rees, the play clock hit 0, I believe, so Notre Dame got lucky they didn't get hit with the delay of game. He kind of just tossed one up to you.
Yeah. So we, Robbie Toma, myself and Tommy, we all played sprinkles in that game, but not too much. And we all got the call. We got the call right there at the end to we're going in for 2-minute drill, and we were ready. And it was great to see the look in Tom's eyes and Robbie's eyes. We're veteran players. We weren't playing a ton. We hadn't started or anything like that. But that's the whole thing about keeping the good attitude. And it's not about you; it's about the team. And Robbie and Tommy are the most selfless people I know. And are a testament to that. And I think that's important when you get thrown into a situation like that, where all of a sudden you go in for the 2-minute drills. Just stay prepared, next man in, was our mentality. And we went in there, and Robbie had a couple really good catches. Tommy stayed relaxed, except for that exact play, which is pretty funny. And I was looking back at a couple articles regarding that play, and me, Tom, and Robbie did an interview, I think, with, I can't remember, whoever did the interviews back then. We kind of did a during the week, they showed us the play and we kind of walked through the play for them. And what happened during that play with Tommy and I is great. The play clock was counting down, and I just had a go route. That's what I knew I was running. That's what he knew I was running. And we were looking back and forth at the play clock, and I was looking up at 3, 2, and I looked back at Tommy, and he's calling a timeout. He's walking up to the line calling a timeout, and then starts clapping. And I look back up at the at the play clock, and it's going to 0. And then I look back over to Tommy at that second, and the ball was in his hands, and he was being sacked, and just tosses the ball up in the air. So I just took off. And right when I took off, luckily it was just in a perfect position, kind of held off the defensive back, and just that chemistry was there. That's the type of team we had that year, and it fell into my hands. So I just kind of did my job of catching the football. So, but me and Tommy looked at each other and started laughing. I caught it and went out of bounds, so we had some time to just relax for a second. So, and I think Robbie had another big catch after that, and then we completed it with the field goal to win the game by Brenza. So that was a special play, definitely a memorable one, because of just the circumstances and everything that went into it, and kind of one of those season-saving plays and drives for us. And that was a big part of that year, as you can see from that game to Stanford to Pitt, so on and so forth. That was actually, that type of resilience is what Coach Kelly teaches, as you can see from his teams over the last couple of years, especially last year. So that was a fun play.
Like you said, Kyle Brenza hit the game-winning field goal. I think they had to do a kickoff or something like that, and the rest was history with that Purdue game. But yeah, that was awesome, as well as I was at the Stanford game too, man. A lot of those games are really close, but fun season. Next game kind of coming up, I think it was like a week or a few weeks after the Purdue game.
Obviously that was the Michigan State game, and in a special season like that, obviously you kind of have your highlights from every single game there. But if you could just kind of run us through your touchdown there that you had in that game. I know obviously that you had many of them, but if you could just run through that one for us, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, that was a good one as well. We had a play drawn up, and I think it was called flood. And what flood is, it's pretty much everybody, the quarterback and the line protect right, and the quarterback, Everett at the time, floods out to the right, and he doesn't normally look backside on that play, but you have to stay alive. And I was the backside receiver, and I think Robbie and Tyler were on the front side. And I just pretty much was running a post route, and you just stay open. You got to stay pretty skinny towards the post. You can't be you can't come over too flat, because then you'll kind of impede someone else's route on that particular play. But Everett being Everett, you just always got to stay alive, and because you never know where he's going to look. And he got outside the pocket and had a ton of time, and just looked back at me and caught eyes, and I knew it was coming to me. So he launched that thing up in the air, and I just kind of falling back, and next thing I know, I'm jumping for the ball, and my arms get, pretty much ripped down to the ground, and it fell into my hands, and made a play, and that's just what you do. I mean, that's what we're taught. That's what your DNA is when you're a receiver at Notre Dame, is just to complete the play regardless if they're climbing on your back or not. And you got to give a ton of credit, first of all, to the line, because they held off that good defensive line, Michigan State line. And I think that play specifically put the dagger into Michigan State right off the bat, because it kind of showed them we came to play. But it was just one of those circumstances, Everett kind of went through his first, second read, and looked backside, and he saw something open, and That's why on every single play, Coach Kelly and Coach Denbrock and Tony Alford, when he was with us, they just always taught to just finish the play backside, whether you're blocking backside on a dive play or whether you're the backside receiver on that particular play where you're the last read. It's important to stay open, and I think that goes to show for any young kids that are listening or anything like that if you are in a situation where you think that you're just not going to get the ball, that's not the mindset you should have. To always continue to think ahead and to stay ahead of your opponents, and the ball could fall in your arms for a touchdown versus Michigan State. At Michigan State, I think they were number 10 team in the country at that time, so it was a pretty special moment of the year.
Yeah, you're dead on. I remember that like it was yesterday. I can't believe it's been almost 7 years. Yeah, they were number 10. You guys were number 20, and that was kind of the big moment of the year when you guys went on the road at Michigan State, Spartan Stadium, hard place to win at, and you guys went there and really dominated them. They had, I think it was Le'Veon Bell was at Michigan State too, and with the defense you guys had back then too, once you guys got a lead, it was really no looking back, and that catch was awesome with the guy pass interference and all, and you still caught it. Man, that was definitely one of the moments in Notre Dame history. It sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah. Moving on, some other games. Obviously, we could talk on here for hours about all the games, but kind of some other high points. That game at Oklahoma, too. I know I was thinking this was kind of that Michigan State game was kind of saying Notre Dame's kind of back. And then when you got to the Oklahoma, I guess you guys are kind of written off. All the guys on College Game Day were picking Oklahoma. I was like, okay, this might be when they actually get the first loss of the year. Then you guys kind of went there and pulled away towards the end. Can you tell me about what it was like playing there Saturday night, prime time, the stripe out they had going on, and all the great moments you guys had?
Yeah, that Oklahoma was probably one of the more special ones of the season because it was the most decisive victory. We went out and in terms of preparation and the team was healthy at the time and all of those good things. The luck of the Irish just came about that night and went into town. And personally, and this is me speaking personally, I like playing away games, probably more than home games because there's nothing better than shutting up a crowd and walking in there and those folks, having Notre Dame come to their stadium, they were ready to go. And just so happened we were more ready. So we went out there and just stopped them. And I remember one of the main plays of that game was Chris Brown, Breezy, man. He was a skinny little freshman at that time and a kid that, always was asking questions and was always staying active and always staying, ready to play. And he got his shining moment in that game with that long go route that he ran and that post route. I think that was at the beginning of the game, actually, where that set the tone in that game. So just Sierra played an awesome game that game. I think everybody just collaborated and came together and really did something special. We really did something special that night. But again, to shut up that crowd out in Norman, Oklahoma is one of those things that, you think back at your college career and it just stands out. And, because of the storied program that Oklahoma has as well and how hyped up the game was. And also, we were 7-0, but I think that people were really writing us off because we haven't had any really, I don't think at that point, really decisive victories or big wins. But that really sealed the deal and made people realize that we were for real.
Yeah, completely. I remember that Chris Brown play, like I said, like it was yesterday, where the play action hit him for like 50 yards downfield, and as well as Sierra Woods' long run, wide open, or Teo's diving interception, stuff like that. And that was a great feeling. Moving on to another game you had, kind of similar, like you just talked us through process at Michigan State catch. So this was kind of later in the year at Boston College when Everett Golson was rolling to his right, and then you were kind of open on the far left side again for another wide open touchdown.
Yeah, that's very similar to that Michigan State play, but obviously kind of dumbed down to, I think we were on like the short yardage line. We were definitely in the red zone, and Everett was looking right, and I can't remember what the play call was, but I remember kind of the gist of it, and I was supposed to just kind of get to the back of the end zone and sprint across the back of the end zone to look for the ball. Usually if I catch it, it's caught right at around the goalpost. And we called eyes again, and the guy that was guarding me, the DB, was looking back at Everett running with me, and I knew, Everett wasn't going to throw the ball, but he kind of expected me to do what I did, which was just, stop and turn the other way, and went back towards the corner of the end zone, and he just caught me, was wide open, easy touchdown. And I think it was kind of an underlooked touchdown too, because that put us up, I think, 20-3, and or something of that nature. And it was a fairly close game. Actually, people forget about that. Our defense played great that game. Offense didn't play too great, but that touchdown was a nice cushion to have. That's for sure.
And like I keep reiterating, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan, so I remember some of this stuff like it was yesterday. I remember Romanowski all over TV that week. I think it was Bill Romanowski, the famous football player.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big Boston College guy, so he was doing all kinds of pep talks for Boston College leading up to that game. I remember like it was yesterday. And then when you actually caught that touchdown, Brett Musburger, the famous college analyst, as soon as you caught that touchdown, after that he said, just like at Spartan Stadium, because him and Kurt Herbstreit, they probably remember that catch you had at Spartan Stadium too. So I thought that was really cool. I've been going back and watching some of the highlights, but that's some kind of big takeaways from that. Next question we got, Nick?
Yeah, obviously, and then throughout the many touchdowns you had that season, another big one was obviously that 50-yard bomb at the Wake Forest game. Just wanted to see if you can kind of walk us through that one, see from your eyes how that play kind of developed.
Yeah, so that was very similar to the flood play I was talking about in the Michigan State game, but I was on the play side, so Everett was looking to roll out to that side, and I just had a simple go route, and Wake Forest was playing in a really aggressive cover one defense and up on us receivers, and we did. We burned them all day, but that one right there he was up on me, and all I had to do was just run past him, and that's pretty much as simple as as wild as that play was, 50-yard go route. It was a lot simpler than you would actually have expected, because all I had to do was just run straight, and Everett just threw a dime. Funny thing was, I was looking back into the sun, so I kind of lost the ball for a moment, but as you can see, if you watch slow motion at the end, it kind of hits my chest, and then my arms clamp down on it. But that was a really special one because, that was actually I think my first touchdown, my only touchdown in Notre Dame Stadium. So that was a really special one. On senior day, it was a 60-degree day. It was a perfect day outside. We were going to be, 11-0. And, a lot of guys scored. Tyler scored. Sierre scored. I think Robbie scored, myself, and then so on and so forth. So extremely special day, really cool one to end on. And yeah, that was a fun night because that night, somebody, I think Stanford may have beaten Oregon or something like that caused us to go and jump to the number one spot. So we definitely celebrate, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was Oregon, and there was one other team that lost as well. So it was like Oregon lost, and then it was like Kansas State had lost maybe too. So yeah, you guys jumped to number one. And the next question that we have for you.
So obviously the USC game kind of completed out your guys' perfect season there. Like, awesome. I remember kind of sitting here and we were like, that's freaking crazy. They just had an unbelievable, perfect season. I've never seen anything quite like that. But if you could just kind of run us through like the post-game celebration and flying back and kind of how hyped up you guys were knowing that like, hey, yeah, we're about ready to play for a national championship.
Right. Yeah, we got right back to the locker room and everybody just started blaring, "We're going to Miami" by Will Smith. That was it was incredible. And that was another one of those wins that, if you look at the paper, it looked like it was somewhat close, but it was pretty decisive. Our front line, our front seven on both sides of the ball just absolutely went to town on the USC that night. And then we kind of, us and the quarterback and the skill positions, we kind of just, did our jobs and worked out that our game plan put us in the right positions, and we didn't have to worry about much that game. So we were very confident going into the game, and obviously we showed that during the game. Afterward, obviously the celebration is the celebration. When you're 12-0, not many people can talk about that, I don't think. But But when we got home, we all pretty much stayed up till 5, 6 o'clock in the morning because that adrenaline is running and pumping so hard. So, but it was really cool because that following week, we were visiting a couple buddies at down here in Indy actually that went to Butler, and we were watching all the championship games and whatnot just to see who are we going to play. Was the cool part to see where we just got to sit back on the couch and watch college football. So knowing that we're going to Miami next after being out in California and LA isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a friend of the family who lived here in Indianapolis. They moved out to LA last year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to the this past year when Notre Dame played out at USC. Like you were saying earlier, I personally like going to a lot of road games. It's so cool seeing Notre Dame fans travel and stuff. But I bet there was probably a good contingent of Notre Dame fans there too, because my buddy who went out there this past year said it was like 40. It's probably 60-40 USC fans, but there's 40% Notre Dame fans out there. Just crazy how many Notre Dame fans are out there in California, especially. You're probably part of it in 2012, how many Notre Dame fans you could probably hear, and especially when towards the end of the game when all the USC fans were filing out and there's a bunch of Notre Dame fans there cheering you guys on at the end.
Yeah, that's absolutely. There's nothing better than shutting down, the opposing crowd, and to have so many of our fans there too supporting us is special. But I've said it before, and I'll always say it. It's the most diverse community I've ever been a part of, and that's what I loved about it. And the teammates and from just all over the place, and getting to know about so many people from all over the country. Where being from a somewhat small town in Fort Wayne here from Indiana, you just don't get to see that so much. And that at that point, when you think more into it, it all comes together. And we have such a huge fan base out in LA that every time we go out there, same with San Francisco, it's no surprise to us to see a ton of our fans there, and it almost feels like a home game at some point.
Yeah, one weekend this past year, Notre Dame was playing all the way out in San Diego, and it's full of Notre Dame fans. And then a week or two later, they were playing all the way out in New York, and Yankee Stadium was full of Notre Dame fans. And then they go all the way back to L.A., and there's full of Notre Dame. It's just crazy. Speaking of road games and stuff, these last couple of years as a Notre Dame fan, I went to Notre Dame Stadium so much. I love it. I like going to road games too. I went to Spartan Stadium a few years ago, Northwestern last year. Next year I'm going to go to the Big House in Louisville. What are some of your favorite road places to play at, neutral site places that you like to go into?
That's a good question, and we played in so many. I think that one that was really special to me was the Alamo Dome actually in Texas, because from touchdown to touchdown, my last high school touchdown was. I played in the Army All-American game, and Terrell Pryor actually threw me a touchdown in that game. And then my next college touchdown was in the Alamo Dome versus, who'd we play? Washington State from Dane. Dano threw me my first college touchdown, and that was in the Alamo Dome. So I think playing there was really special. But in terms of, the real atmosphere, playing away at Michigan, playing at Michigan State, those are two extremely special places to play, and just really where the fans get after it, and so it's obviously fun to be able to shut them up a little bit. And then I think the Shamrock Series was special as well. We played up in Chicago. Where else did we play? We played the first of I think it was the first game in the new Yankee Stadium. We were the first football game, so that was a good one too. And yeah, I could go on and on because we played all over the place. We played in the Champs Bowl. We played in El Paso. We played out in Hawaii. So those were our bowl games when I was there. But, when you're looking back at, wow, you played in so many different states, so many different stadiums from all over the country, and also one in Ireland. You can't forget Ireland, obviously. But, that's what you get at Notre Dame, and that's what you sign up for. And it's a real national stage, and get your mind right, because you're going to be front and center on the television every Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Washington State game you're referring to was like the first Shamrock Series game they had. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was like a Halloween night or something like that. I remember watching that, and you guys put on a clinic against Washington State. Like they threw up like a Hail Mary with like no time left at halftime, and Golden Tate jumped over like 5 guys to score a touchdown. But that was really cool to watch too. Next kind of transition question we got for you. every time we have players on here, we kind of have different questions just depending on their careers and what they did, that sort of thing. And this is kind of a special question for you since your situation, the years you were there.
Yeah, so obviously you said you got recruited by Coach Weiss, but obviously you also saw Coach Brian Kelly come in and you kind of ended your career under him. Can you just kind of run us through the difference between the two, like their coaching styles and just kind of how they motivated you guys, all those kind of things?
Yeah, they were totally different, but both coaching styles that I was very much privy and accustomed to Coach Weiss's coaching style. That's kind of what I came out of high school. We had somewhat of a pro style offense. We didn't do necessarily the run and gun, which Coach Kelly was one of the guys that originated that type of offense and ran it so effectively. I came in to play for Coach Weiss, and he, at the receiver position, we only had 2 wideouts, and very rarely did we have 3 receivers in the game, unless we were running like 2-minute or anything like that. But it was pro style, and I think that's the main difference is that Coach Kelly's offense was more of a run and gun and short and more of a methodical offense down the field, and you want to run the ball, but you also need to pass the ball, and didn't really go for many shots. And also we definitely didn't huddle, so we had to learn all of the signals and things like that. So totally different change of pace. And frankly, the funny thing is when Coach Kelly came in, I wasn't ready for that in regard to my shape. And when him and Coach Longo, who was our strength coach, came in, it hit us hard. The guys that were under Coach Weiss, we had to get into shape. That's for sure. Not that we weren't, but it was just a different type of shape when you're running from 70 plays a game to 90 to 100 plays a game. So, but in regard to their specific coaching style and who they were as people, definitely liked them both and what they had, what their mindset was and what they expected out of us. They both obviously expected a lot out of us, and Coach Weiss specifically bringing in a lot of pro-style players. He was the type of guy that wanted us to be kind of accountable for ourselves in a lot of aspects of just the college life. And Coach Kelly, coming from that college background, kind of understood where we were coming from, and that our needs, like a training table and things like that, that just kind of made it a little bit more simple to live the NCAA, athlete type of life. So there were a lot of differences, a lot of good things that came from both, and definitely learned a lot from both. But all in all, I think, if I could do it all over again, I would probably, I'd probably take Coach Kelly's type of offense, because, once you do get accustomed to that and once you do get used to it, there's just a lot more opportunity on the field, a lot more receivers that are playing more often, and I feel like it's definitely a good offense for a receiver to play in. So,
yeah, absolutely, that's a good take on that. Next question is kind of like with the Weiss and the Kelly era. I believe all these guys you played with. Could you tell me what it was like to play with some of these guys who are really talented? Like, I believe you played with all of them: Golden Tate, Rudolph, Eifert, Clausen, some of those guys. What was some of the guys who were just crazy athletes at practice or anything that stood out to you?
Man, where should I begin? I'll keep it short though. Yeah, I guess with my class specifically, Floyd's one of those guys that him and I played the same position for years, and guys like Kyle, just how big they were and how much they had developed from high school into college. And we had a lot of Midwest guys like that, and so I kept tabs with and kept in contact with Kyle and Mike, and once I got to school, saw guys like Jimmy and guys like Golden, and just the type of people they were, and learning their backgrounds and whatnot. It's just like, man, I got my work cut out for me to try to catch up, to try to be beat out, and try to just even play on the same field with these guys. But I think that's what kind of continued to raise the spirit and the competitive nature of our team, was to push and try to be just as good or prove yourself versus the folks that from all over the country, from LA to all the way over to Texas, all the way over to Florida, all the way up to New Jersey and New York, that that were 5 and 4 and 5-star guys that, were highly touted with, 50 and 60 offers. I think that, just some guys like Golden, just how goofy he is, and the Michigan State when he jumped in the band.
Yep.
Floyd with just things that he's a character, that's for sure. And Kyle, going 3 years and just like, being the type of player that he can come back from, tearing his hamstring off of his leg and coming back and now he's in the league for his 7th or 8th year. And, Harrison Smith, who just, was always a good player in college and then finally just fit the perfect niche of the Vikings. And he's a multiple Pro Bowler. And, man, I can go on and on with the guys that are in the NFL like these days with Tyler and whatnot, and the resilience he has, and Zach Martin and Nick Martin and Ronnie Stanley, and it's just going to continue. I mean, it's not going to stop anytime soon. Notre Dame is just too big of a platform, and everybody just raises their expectations and their standards once they get to a school like that, and that's why you continue to see guys not only get to the league but be successful in the league, as well as off the field. A lot of guys that I know, I mean, the small percentage that go to the NFL, but the high percentage of guys that are now, just making a ton of money all over the place in the country and just have great jobs, and that Notre Dame network, that's one of those things that you can thank for that. But yeah, back to your question, I mean, it's I wish I could think of all the guys in order of and give you stories about each one of them, but we'd be here all night.
Yeah.
Definitely a treat to be able to play with folks like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of that.
So speaking of that, I think you kind of hit on keeping in touch with some of the guys that are, Midwestern type guys, but specifically what players and coaches do you still keep in touch with the most?
Not many coaches. Obviously, Tommy. I do get back to the games a lot, and the coaches that are still there, I think, are just Coach Kelly and Dave Ploquin's still there. He's still working in player development and whatnot. And then I know that, who else is still there from when I was there? Trying to think of names, and I'm drawing a blank a little bit. I actually stayed in touch with Coach Alford, who's over at Ohio State now for a couple of years out of college, and Denbrock as well. He was my receiver coach as well, and he's now at Cincinnati. I guess so that's one of those other things that these coaches that come to Notre Dame, they continue to develop and go either head coach or work elsewhere and find huge success. So not too many coaches though, but in terms of players, pretty much everybody that I played with in my span, Ty, Zach, was just at Brandon Newman's wedding a couple weeks ago with Golick and Kaepernick Lewis Moore, and you go back to games and it's just you start it. When you see one of your buddies you played with, it takes you right back to your college days, and it's right back to as if you've been hanging out every day for years. The type of conversations and whatnot that we have, and that's the really special part about the Notre Dame community and having gone there is that you develop these relationships and you keep them and you stay close to these guys for so long, and even the guys that you weren't best friends with. Not everybody's going to be best friends with one another, but you still care about them. You still want to hear about what they're doing, and you still are so happy for them and that they found success for themselves. So yeah, that's the kind of community that it is, and to stay in touch with all these guys and continue to watch these guys around the league that 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, that's a long time. And for the guys to still be in the NFL when the average, NFL contract or I guess time frame for somebody lifetime is what, 2.5 or 3 years is just such a special thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we try to keep these shows here under an hour. I think we've touched on about every question we had for you here. Speaking of keeping in touch with players and stuff like that, how often do you get to go back for games, or how many games you kind of get to go to a year, would you say? Are you have any plans on going to any games this year?
Well, my wife and I are expecting, so we will try to get up to a couple, but we've got an August baby coming, so which is obviously big news for us. But I think we'll still if we can, we'll definitely get up to a game. But I've gone to at least one every year. My first 3 years out of when I was out of Notre Dame, I pretty much went to every single home game. And I've gone to a couple away as well. I went to the Clemson game this last year, Florida State, and I also went to Michigan. So, we're spoiled. We're extremely spoiled as former players because the alumni network does so good for us, so many good things for us, and the Monogram Club and Reggie Brooks and all the folks that are involved there, and the Indianapolis Notre Dame Club as well as the Fort Wayne Club of Notre Dame. Those are fantastic clubs, and they always keep you in touch, and they always take care of you. So to find a ticket is never an issue for me and former players, and they always give us the passes to go pregame and whatnot down on the field before the games and stuff like that, and just always staying in touch and staying connected. So that's just the Notre Dame way.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, congratulations. Second, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate everything we were able to talk about. We say this with everybody, but it truly is. We're fans of everybody we watched on TV growing up. Especially we were in high school when you got senior year in high school when you guys were going to that championship and that undefeated season in 2012. Even on the old NCAA football games, they still have on the Xbox we play sometimes. Robbie Toma, a little more so because he kind of goes across the middle when I'm playing with Notre Dame on the NCAA football game. But we really, truly appreciate you coming on here. If you don't mind sticking around here, we're going to kind of wrap up the show a little quick. Just stay on the line while we're wrapping up and getting the video finished up and everything. So we just interviewed John Goodman. Great interview. You guys can go watch it on replay as well. Huge fan of him. He was there during the Weiss era, the Kelly era. A lot of great memories with him in 2012. All the great touchdown catches he's had, pass interference or not, still catching the football, and great undefeated season. You have anything else, Nick?
Nope. Just once again, thank you for coming on here, man. I appreciate everybody that comes on here, but especially guys from that undefeated season. It's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you guys again. I really appreciate the time today, and it's always a joy to talk about